Justice and mercy in the Old Testament. Justice in the Old Testament sounds right, but mercy in the Old Testament again? Isn't that the most challenged image of how God has been perceived there? Anything but merciful? I'm curious how the lesson will defend that.
Justice and mercy in regards to salvation and the character of God is a huge theological question. But let's keep in mind the context of these lessons. We are talking about the role of the church in the community, and we started by looking at how things were intended at creation, how they developed after sin. Now we are looking through the Old Testament, then we will see some insights from Jesus, and we will end up with our days. So, looking at the Old Testament times, how did God see us, humans, relating to each other?
God chose a whole nation to be His ambassador to this world. But how would He lead him and how would He instruct them? What kind of society will they become? Sometimes when you look at a child, you can see a projection of his parents, and there is a lot of truth to it. There was a special place in the ancient Israel society for the poor, for the widow, for the foreigner. We can see it expressed in the Sabbaths, in the land laws, and even in the justice system, which within its power had brought mercy even for the criminals and the thieves, something outrageous in today's terms. And all that thanks to one considerate and merciful God.
In the provisions that God did for the society of Israel, we see His vision for social justice. Human societies struggle to find this balance and successful social justice. How can you be social, for example, and do not promote laziness? Real justice and mercy can only coexist and complement each other in God. It's amazing to see how in His system God cares about our recovery and restoration, about us to be given chances and opportunities, but in the same time, provisions for involvement and contributions.
And the lesson makes an interesting but definitive point when talking about some Sabbaths, like the 7-day Sabbath, being of universal concern. And some Sabbaths, like the Sabbath year and the year of Jubilee, that they had their own time and place of observance, although illustrating eternal principles. And rightfully so. We know that every country and every government nowadays makes their own laws of justice. But we also know that God works through those governments, but He does not impose His principles with force.
God expressed His principles through holidays and practices, but we tend to focus on how to beat the system and to make it to work for us. The fact is that we neglect our duty toward each other, and God is asking us to be His prophetic voice in this regard. He says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy."
Have you ever thought that there is a strong interdependence between social justice and worshiping the God of the Bible? According to the book of Isaiah chapter 1 verse 13 to 17, any form of worship that you can imagine has no meaning to God if we have no concern of our wrongdoings, or our concern for the oppressed, or our concern for the poor and unfortunate. And this makes me conclude that worshiping God is not some sort of religious behavior, nothing close to it, but genuine social life with concern for those in need. This is what true worship is.
So it's not just about being the people who have the right doctrines, or go to church on the right day, or put on the right clothes. Are we missing the essence of what Christ expects from us? Isaiah 58 is about people who pretend doing the right things. For day after day, they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and have not forsaken the commands of its God. And then it continues with some very serious accusation for not caring about others. Could this be for us?
In the busyness of today's life, we have forgotten even to think of those in need. Even worse, we have become so judgmental that we reason of, should I help somebody or he can help himself? and how sweet it is to help someone. Jesus was genuinely concerned, and he was intentionally helpful. And exactly this quality of his character made such a big difference in people's opinions and people's lives. For me, I just have to find a way to make space in my personal life for the needs and the concerns of other people.
The lesson started with a story about a boy standing in the cold with bare feet, praying God to provide him shoes. And a woman who warmed and washed his feet, dried them with a towel, and bought him socks and shoes. When she was about to leave, the boy asked her, "Are you God's wife?" The church is the bride, and Jesus is the groom. But are we God's wife?